Hi, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Exona. I am part of the executive education team at LEORON Institute. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to join us today. I know it's midday, so it's a bit difficult to give, considering the competitive calendar slot every senior leader has, which is why exactly we wanted to build today's session around these challenges, almost how every executive we work with, it's how difficult it is to not just the crafting of the strategy, but the execution of it. And we have been operating in a market where, disruption is no longer a moment, but it's the operating context for most of all. But this is exactly the conversation we're planning on having today with one of our most respected voices globally on strategy and organizational capability. It's my pleasure to welcome Professor Philip Mayer Doyle of INSEAD. He's been with INSEAD for more than 12 years now. Philip's work on strategy, on managerial capability, and the micro foundations of organization performance have shaped many generations now of senior leaders, how they think about translating intent into execution. So just two notes before we start. Please drop your questions in the chat at any point. We will try to get to as many of them as as time will allow us in the Q&A. And of course, we will record the session so we can share it with you afterwards. So now I leave the floor to Philip to start and discuss the details of the program a little bit more into details. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Exona. And it's a pleasure to meet everybody. I hope you can see my slides. If not, do shout, do add a comment in the chat. It's a real pleasure to be able to give this webinar and to also introduce the program, the Strategy Execution for Business Growth program that INSEAD is delivering in collaboration with the LEORON Institute. And actually, this is not the first version of this program. We have already delivered several versions and very successfully so. So I very much look forward to hopefully seeing you soon at one of the upcoming cohorts. So a word about myself. Actually, my time at INSEAD has grown. So I've been with INSEAD for 14 years and counting. I'm a tenured professor at INSEAD and I'm based in Singapore. So I'm joining you today from Singapore. So 5 hours ahead of the kingdom. So while you were having lunch, I'm having dinner. My background is I've got a PhD from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, a master's degree from there as well, and a bachelor from the London School of Economics. And before becoming an investment bank, before becoming an academic, I used to be an investment banker and private equity professional. My research is very much focused on growth and growth-oriented topics such as mergers and acquisitions. And interestingly, I have a human capital perspective as well. It's so important for making growth work. I teach in INSEAD's executive education programs, and most of my programs focus on strategy execution, getting things done, especially getting growth done. Quite experienced in executive education. I direct our flagship program oriented towards growth. I teach in the most senior programs at INSEAD, the advanced management program, as well as the directors program, and have directed over 100 customized executive education programs, both in Asia, the Middle East, as well as in Europe. And I work with a number of different companies, and here is just a selection of those that I work with. And you can see within the kingdom, I've worked with a number of companies and working currently with a number of companies that are fairly well known, like Aramco, the PIF, a couple of banks like BSF, Saudi Investment Bank, or the insurance company Tavernier, among others. And as the program director, I've designed the Strategy Execution for Business Growth program in conjunction with LEORON. And of course, the focus of this program is very much helping you in your strategic thinking, but also helping you in executing a strategic initiative and ultimately helping you to achieve growth. And it's actually quite relevant not only for for-profit private sector organizations, but it's also quite relevant to public sector organizations. In fact, number of the past participants to this program have been public sector organizations. And even there, not only is in a lot of public sector organizations I would say, a growth mentality mindset that is needed, but also strategic thinking is quite important, and getting things done, getting initiatives executed is quite important in public sector organizations, especially the disruption and the geopolitical upheaval that we're experiencing at the moment. So I'd like to kind of just briefly lay out the rationale for the program before I talk a little bit about the program itself. If you think about companies, organizations, it doesn't have to be for-profit companies, any kind of organizations, and I put a couple here on the slide. You could always find successful organizations and unsuccessful organizations. And typically, if you look at successful and unsuccessful organizations, one of the key dividing factors that helps you understand why they succeed and why they fail is that successful organizations have good strategies, but not only that, they also can execute these strategies. So strategy and coming up with a plan and coming up with an initiative and a response to geopolitical uncertainty, to competitive dynamics in an industry, it requires also the ability to execute. And so in this program, you're going to really focus on both of these elements, because I believe that if you just focus on one and you ignore the other, you ultimately are not going to be able to achieve success. So whether it's public, private organizations, either of those, in this program, you're going to be equipped with superior strategic thinking capabilities, but also to understand how to ultimately execute your plans and get your organization and the different members of your organization on board. In fact, if you think about execution, implementation, it's really this critical step between coming up with a plan and ultimately achieving success. Some people even say that success in any organization is down to 95% execution capabilities and only 5% strategy. I think it's probably a bit of an over-exaggeration there, but I think you will appreciate that both execution and strategy is important. And it's not just an anecdotal saying. In fact, if you talk to senior decision makers in organization all over the world and you ask them, what is your key concern? One of the things that they're going to say over and over again is execution capabilities. In fact, when the conference board asked survey participants in the CEO challenge, what are your biggest concerns to organizational success? The number one factor that was brought up was excellence in execution. Number two factor was to do with growth. Number three factor was, again, to do with execution. So if you think about these three factors and you think about the theme of the program, strategy, execution for things, ultimately you see that we're addressing these key concerns of senior decision makers when it comes to organizational success. Now, it's quite interesting to think about what are the reasons why strategy is not leading to success. What is the reason why execution ultimately fails? And many people refer to this as the strategy execution gap or the strategy implementation gap, the gap between what you had in mind and ultimately what was implemented. And I'm just showing you an interesting graphic here. Again, it's based on a survey from PwC. Some of the key findings in their survey for the reasons why execution failed, because they asked managers what would make the most difference to closing the strategy execution gap at your organization. And you see actually a number of factors here that I mentioned. And when I work with executives and companies on the leadership development, especially as it pertains to execution, a lot of these factors are brought up over and over again. So there is certainly face validity in a lot of the factors that have been brought up here. So if you see, there is a dividing line. Everything to the left of this dividing line is to do with the strategy. Strategy is not clear. If the strategy is not clear, people will not be able to execute the strategy. If the strategy is not different enough, differentiated enough from others, from other strategies, people often don't see the point. Why should we adopt this plan? It's essentially the same as the old plan, or it's the same as some other organization's plan, and we're not going to set ourselves apart. Many times it's not bold enough, and sometimes it's out of reach with what we can achieve. And so you can see there's a very fine line. You don't want to be over ambitious in your strategy, but you also don't want to be kind of under ambitious either. So you have to be very clear in setting reachable targets in your strategy, and ensuring that people have the feeling they will be able to achieve that, but at the same time, it's not just low-hanging fruits. And then lastly, of course, if you have a strategy that's not coherent, it's a big driver for ultimately, in fact, it's the biggest driver on the left side in terms of percentages for why the strategy execution gap exists. People ultimately think the strategy doesn't make that much sense. Now, if you see to the right, these are all things to do with the execution. And some of the numbers are much bigger here. So if this look at the biggest number, the biggest peak here is we're not aligned behind the strategy. So people within the organization ultimately don't agree that this is the right plan going forward. So you haven't gotten them on board for the journey. They are ultimately not convinced that this is the right plan. Yeah. Too many conflicting priorities, and I'm pretty sure this resonates with you. I know organizations in the kingdom are quite ambitious. You are in an extremely dynamic market, fast-paced market, and you have a lot of work to do. You have not only one project to manage, you have multiple different projects that you have to manage. And many times you have so much on your plate that naturally it's difficult to understand how to prioritize between the different factors. So you can see it's the second biggest factor here on the right. Another one that is very interesting is to do with the culture, and culture can be an interesting driver of the strategy execution gap from two different perspectives. It can be a driver from the perspective that we're a very, very successful organization, and we have a culture of excellence. And if you're the leading company in the industry, or if you're the leading organization, public sector organization, people often wonder, why do we need to change? We're the best. Why do we need to adopt this new plan? Let others who are falling behind or far behind us ultimately adopt that plan. So that's one culture problem. The other culture problem is to do with bureaucratic organizations that are even not doing that well. For them to get change done requires getting multiple levels on board, getting approvals from multiple different levels. And it usually is very slow and inert, and ultimately it hampers the execution of the strategy. A couple of other factors that were identified. We haven't translated the strategy into action, and I think this is a big execution issue here, because many times we come up with very, very complex strategies. We want to do the AI transformation. We want to have more agility in the organization. Let's grow. What does that actually mean? How can we have this overarching goal or this overarching strategy really broken down into small projects that people actually can execute? It's often a big stumbling block. Many times people are not focused enough on strategy execution. Strategy execution is an interesting part. It's not something that anybody majors in. It is often not even something that people get formal training in, but people are just expected to pick it up. And it's so critical to success. It's actually a paradox if you think about it, that people ultimately need strategy execution skills. In part, this is why we have developed this program to really enable you to have the skills that you typically don't pick up in your functional training, to be able to execute transformation and bring your idea into reality. And then lastly, and I think this is also a common factor, and I'm surprised in fact that this is not This is not getting bigger percentages. We don't allocate the right resources or enough resources. And I hear this over and over again, that companies dedicate a lot of resources to strategy development, and then they just expect that the strategy executes itself, or we kind of just use all the free time that all the people have in the organization to execute the strategy, when in reality there's often really limited resources available because everybody's busy doing their functional role. So just to kind of give you a bit of background why the strategy execution gap exists. Now, what I want to do is I want to kind of explain to you how the program that we've designed fits this picture, but also how it really addresses these points and equips you with capabilities to grow the business, grow the organization, and get what you want to achieve done within the organization. And of course, this is where INSEAD comes in. We want to enable you. We want to equip you with the ability to succeed. The program not only ultimately helps you in kind of equipping you with skills, but also it exposes you to a very interesting network of participants. Because if you look at any organization, you obviously develop a strong network within the organization, but your business success, your organizational success is often dependent on your network outside the organization. And of course, you are building your network outside the organization, but sometimes it's really helpful to make deep, meaningful connections with other people who are in a similar situation, but they're not necessarily working for a competitor, not necessarily working from within the company, but in similar, like-minded organization. And in this program, you're going to be part of a cohort of other executives within the kingdom, within the Middle East, where you are ultimately can consider each other a peer that can help you in future development, a peer that you can fall back, but also a peer that you can help as well. So an important element of the program is also kind of the peer network that you're establishing. The program is going to help you both in the short term. We're going to give you very tangible, specific recommendations and action items, but also in the longer term, of course, as you're developing skills with regards to execution, strategic thinking, and the ability to collaborate within the organization. Now, here finally is the program that we have designed. I'm going to spend a bit of time going through this. It's a 3-day program, and it starts on day 1 after a campus tour on our Fontainebleau Campus, which is our original campus based in France, about 45 minutes southeast of Paris, with a session on strategic thinking. How do you think of success in any organization? What are the factors that are dividing companies that are successful to unsuccessful beyond even execution capabilities and beyond kind of strategic thinking? What are drivers of success in any organization? How should that affect your strategy formulation, your plans, but also how should that affect your capacity and execution plans as well? An important theme in that first session is going to be future readying your organization. We're going to give you systematic tools that help you foresee what is coming at you as an organization. We're going to look at horizon scanning techniques that help you understand in the short term, in the medium term, as well as in the long term, what disruption is coming at you, whether it's a private sector organization in a particular industry or whether it's a public sector organization. And then importantly, how can you develop responses? How can you make the organization ready to withstand and even prosper in these future trends and future kind of disruptions that are coming at you? We're also going to think a little bit here about AI. How can AI be a driver of your success? What's the promise of AI for you to differentiate yourself against the others in the industry, if at all? And if so, what are the factors that actually help you utilize AI for success and as a factor to stand out? Finally, we're also going to help you understand what capabilities you have now, but also what capabilities you need in the future to be successful. Now, this session, I would say, is probably, in terms of the way it is taught, the most traditional in the program. We actually have quite a diverse set of very engaging learning methodologies. And so this session is very much laying the foundations, and it does so through an interactive discussion, through workshop style exercises. It's the most traditional. All the others have a particular type of technology that I think you'll be very interested in. After lunch, after the photo as well, we are going to start the afternoon with a session on how do you power growth in your organization. We're going to look at what should be the driver of growth. When do you grow? Why should you grow? How should you grow? Where should you grow? What are areas that you want to intensify your growth? What are areas maybe you want to even exclude from your portfolio? Here's where we also are utilizing virtual reality. So rather than reading a case, because in your executive development for the last 10 years, you've probably read case after case after case. In this program, as I said, we're using more modern innovation focused learning tools. So rather than you reading a case, a 30-page case, you actually here in this session will witness the case using virtual reality technology. We've recorded the case in virtual reality based on actors, based on scripts, based on quite a elaborate case scenario that is informed by real life situations. And you're going to be placed in boardroom discussions where leaders making decisions about growth, about where to grow, about how to grow. And you're going to experience the interesting dynamics that ensues in the board and help you understand how to be an effective board member here as well. And I think this is quite important for you because in the future, even though you may not be a board member now, you will be a board member in the future at some stage. And so it's preparing you for exactly these kind of discussions when it comes to strategy. The second day, so the first day, if you want, really focuses on strategic thinking and helping strategy and strategy formulation. Second day focuses very much on laying the foundations for strategy execution. We're going to use a multitude of different methods, including role play exercises. Exercises such as group discussions, as well as an interactive competitive strategy execution simulation, where you systematically will be able to identify and learn how to identify what are the obstacles to successful strategy execution. How do I overcome these obstacles? How do I prepare my organization to be ready to execute? How do I manage my stakeholders? How do I get my team on board for transformation? And you're going to then practice all of those skills in the simulation. Day 3 has 2 other important topics linked to strategy execution. In the morning of day 3, we're going to dive deeper into getting other people on board, your influencing toolkit, so to speak. We're going to talk about something called fair process leadership, which is the methodology that we've developed at INSEAD to help you ultimately inform plans through engaging with the bottom of the organization and other parts of the organization to really come up with a plan that people are on board with because they had a say in it, as opposed to you just telling them this is the plan and go and do it, because in reality, many times people will opt out of this. You're then going to practice this tool, but also your specific influencing skills in a AI-powered simulation where you're going to have to convince 5 very sophisticated AI characters in Zoom calls to come on board for a particular strategic initiative that we're telling you. You have to use a multitude of different skills to be able to get them on board. And there are different degrees of difficulty, some easy, some hard. And as you're doing that, after every 10 minutes conversation, you're getting detailed feedback on what you did well, what you can do better, and what you should do differently in the future. So Receive is systematically improving your capabilities to execute by influencing others. This is also a competitive simulation. You're going to be as a group. You'll be doing this in a group compared against all the other to really help you not only learn something when it comes to influencing and getting others on board, but also have fun in a competitive spirit as well. Last session of the program, and this is where we're going to utilize a game here. So if you see about the different learning methods, we've got cases, we've got workshop, we've got virtual reality, we've got simulation, role plays, group discussions, AI powered computer simulations, and now finally a game as well, where we think about how can you use partnerships to grow, how can you use partnerships to innovate, and how can you use partnerships to execute transformation. And these could be private to private partnerships, meaning between two companies. It could be public to public partnerships between two government organizations, or it could be public to private partnerships, any of those partnerships. We're going to learn about the best practices when managing these partnerships, but we're also going to learn about the pitfalls when it comes to these partnerships. And ultimately, we're going to practice this in a fun game where you will be placed in different groups, having to partner with each other in order to win the game, of course. And as you're doing that, you're learning additional insights into being a successful partner to other organizations, what makes some partnerships successful, what makes other partnerships unsuccessful, and how can you be successful to use partnerships to execute transformation and grow at your organization. And of course, at the very end, it's the graduation ceremony as well. All right, with that, I want to open the floor for questions. And in fact, I'm going to just check in the chat as well in case we've had any questions.
Philip, that was lovely. I mean, that's really very understandable presentation of the program itself. And it is such a well-structured, I mean, with all the workshops, simulations, and the VR, the virtual reality games that you're doing into this program. So it's really amazing. I mean, even the feedback from last year's sessions that we did at INSEAD Fontainebleau Campus, it was amazing from our clients, from our partners. So, you know, INSEAD, there is a reason why INSEAD is top ranked when it comes to executive education programs. So thank you very much for the presentation. And yeah, feel free, everybody, to ask any questions you might have. Drop them in the chat. Don't be shy. If you need any clarifications, we would be, you know, more than happy to provide answers and guidance. In order to break the ice, I would like to ask you something, Philip, Professor, as you were going through.
More directed at you than at me.
Yeah, I was really interested to know. I mean, from your experience, you've had different participants, different delegates, and you've heard all these different stories and you know, people that share their experiences. And what is it that usually? Why do most strategies actually, you know, break down? I know you did speak a lot on the you know, having a clear strategy, aligning it with everybody, and then the execution. It's 95% of why usually strategies fail. But you know, how do the leadership behavior behind this really aligns and makes sure that that no such case happen in organization? What are you seeing that is successful, that these leaders are doing mostly in order not to be in that 95% of where the execution usually fails?
Yeah, it's a good point. So I think successful strategy implementers are very good at communication. They're very good in getting others on board for a change. They're very good at understanding and learning to understand. And these are all, by the way, skills that you can learn. This is not that this is like either you have it or you haven't got it, which is the good thing, right?
Yeah.
So they're very good at understanding people as well and helping them understand what are the reasons why they're simply not coming on board. And of course, people may tell them in their face, yes, I'm on board and I'm going to support you, but then usually what happens in reality is that people are not getting supported. So they're able to understand what is the stumbling block for this person. It may be very different for this person than it is for this person, meaning that you have to be able to treat the team that you're leading as individuals.
Yes.
It's also very much thinking about putting in place a structure for execution where you are coming up with a solid plan, you're communicating that plan, you're then coming up with a way and a plan to ultimately, how do I get number X, person number one, person number two, person number three, person number four on board to not only do what I asked them to do, but to also actively drive the change themselves, become change agents in the organization. How can I do that? How can I use different kinds of influencing techniques for that? It often also fails with stakeholder management. I think this is important. We all have different bosses, and they all tell you do this, and the other one tells you to do this, and the third one tells you to do this, and it's very, very difficult to combine them. So how do we actually keep them all happy to the extent it's possible, but also how do we set prioritizations between them? And so in the course, you're going to learn some tools that help you systematically with the prioritization, but also in trying to understand how do you combine the different stakeholder demands as well.
I think also the game that you mentioned, the simulation game with the influencing the AI characters, I think that's really very interesting way to practice your influencing skills, because as you said, you're dealing with different team members, with different characters, with different people. So you really need to understand the language that they're speaking, to kind of understand each one of your team members and speak their language in order to persuade them, in order to have them on board when you are trying to execute important strategies. So, talking their language and having that, which is something that can be learned. As you said, not everybody is born with these skills. So we learn as we live, and, take these different programs and training and, external help. So I think it's a really great simulation game that you are, adding to this program for to achieve that goal.
And by the way, also just to add, a lot of these tools that we're using, these are not tools that have been around for 20 years. So business education this year, I would say, is very different than what a lot of the participants would have experienced 5 or 10 years ago, especially at INSEAD, where we're really pioneering a lot of these methodologies. So we're trying to make it engaging and fun, and at the same time highly relevant to, of course, what's going on the ground.
Yes, we have to take into consideration all the trends and all the new things. I mean, professionals are you're following the trends, and then they're aware of what's happening, and it's important to keep the sessions interactive and fun at the same time, and for people to learn as much as possible from these programs. So I think INSEAD is doing a great job in that, because it innovates. It's adding new additions to the program all the time, and innovation is what keeps the programs interesting. So I'm not sure if we have any questions. There is a question. Yeah, I think here I see for the investment fee of this program. So I will be sharing the details of the program after the school to everybody. We'll email to everyone the brochure. So we are planning on having this program in INSEAD Fontainebleau Campus this upcoming fall. And it's, as Professor said, it's only a 3 days program. It's a very short but intensive one for executives, for senior leaders that really have busy calendars, busy schedules, but they still want to learn and see what's going on there. So that's why we try to make this program shorter. Where would it be? Yeah, so in Fontainebleau, it's where the campus is of INSEAD, which is 1 hour away from Paris, right, Professor?
Yes, roughly 1 hour away, yeah. 45 minutes from Orly Airport if you're flying there, and about 1 hour, 15 minutes from Charles de Gaulle Airport.
Yeah, it's a really nice, cute place. It's like a village with some really nice hotels. And the campus, of course, is amazing, is beautiful. So the campus experience on its own adds to the whole journey and to the whole experience of the program.
Yeah.
So to kind of wrap it out for senior leader that it's walking out of today's session, what it would be the one thing that you would say them to do from tomorrow morning? What is it, that one advice you would give to?
So that's a tricky question. I think very carefully think about not only what you want to do differently in terms of strategy, but also very carefully plan how are you going to get the people on board? How are you systematically breaking down the strategy into specific bite-sized projects? Who are you going to put in charge? How are these people going to get other people on board? So you have to very carefully plan and never assume that a strategy that is good will essentially execute itself. You have to get people very actively on board, and I think this is what you're learning in this program. You're getting the tools to get the people on board, and you're getting the tools to be successful in transforming your business.
Very good. And I when you talked a little bit about the culture itself, I remember something I've heard many years ago. It said culture eats strategy for breakfast. So I think having the right culture in the organization is very important as well. So just adding on top of that. Let me see if we have, so not sure if we're going to have more questions. I think we can wrap it up. Philip, thank you so much. That was really an exceptional rich session. I really enjoyed it, and I believe all the other senior leaders enjoyed it as well. So the next step, as we said, for everybody interested, we will be sharing, of course, the program brochure and an email to all the attendees that we had today, and we would be more than happy to schedule a call with each one of you to discuss it more and support you in registering and to tell you the next steps. Thank you once again for the insights, and thank you for being all with us today, and we look forward to continuing this conversation some other day as well.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to meeting everybody.
Thank you. Have a pleasant one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.